Hey, it's Ben Flak. We're back again.
Yay!
And hopefully, we'll have lots of new people from Spotify and a couple of other places where we're streaming. We've got all kinds of ghosty stuff today. We have also some UFO stuff. And the great Bob Lazar, who has been sadly beaten up by the mainstream media um, for many years and who has held his own against the barrage. We have some video of an interview and also a lie detector test. So that'll be interesting. And I will hand it over to my co host, my brother Mark, to let him introduce them.
Yep. Uh, to any of you who don't know Bob Lazar, I have no idea why you're watching this show. uh, Bob Lazar was an employee at Area 51. That's been pretty much proven, although you'll see a lot of stuff where they claim that the school he went to never heard of him, he was never born, a lot of this other stuff. They're just trying to, make him disappear, basically. So what I've got here is I've got the second interview. It isn't the first interview. He was disguised, and they called him Dennis in the interview. And then later he came out, as himself and told the story because he felt threatened by the government. So he wanted to come out with this so they would be hesitant to kill him. And I think it makes sense. I've done a lot of research on Bob Lazar. So what I'm going to play first is the George Knapp. If you're not familiar with George Knapp, I also don't know why you're watching this show.
Yeah.
Because George Knapp is like the main reporter in terms of paranormal, especially UFO stuff. And he's been, you'll see in this video, he looks like a young man. Well, he was a young man in that video. He is no longer a young man. He's got gray hair and he's an old fart like me. So, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and play it. It's about 5 or 6 minutes long. And then I've got the story of the gentleman that gave Bob Lazar a lie detector test, which he took several times and passed. So, all right, let me go grab pardon me for disappearing from the camera.
Okie dokie. You'd think these people had learned not to give them lie detector tests because it always just makes the
This week in our series of reports on UFOs, we learned a number of things. That not everybody who sees a UFO is crazy, that our government has lied about UFO information, that it's withheld UFO files, and even spied on UFO witnesses. We've also heard from scientists who say life elsewhere in the universe is virtually a certainty. And we heard that a majority of Americans believe that UFOs are real and come from space. Tonight, in part 5 of his report, George Knapp introduces us to a local man with an amazing and disturbing story. George.
Gary and Mary Ruth, we've been working on this story for a long time, and we'll tell you right up front that it's going to be hard to swallow at first. This week, we've heard the contention of UFO researchers that there's a secret government within our government. While that may be hard to believe coming from the UFO perspective, we've certainly learned in Watergate and the Iran-Contra scandal that factions within our government can and do pursue their own hidden agendas outside of the law, outside the control of Congress, or the knowledge of the American people. This is exactly the type of operation we'll hear about tonight. It's a chilling scenario with worldwide implications that may have its roots right here. Area 51, that mysterious corner of the Nevada test site, is no longer much of a secret. The fact that secretive things go on here is a given, even to the Soviets, who make daily spy flights over the facility to take a peek at what's going on. These photos, never before shown in public, are about as close as anyone will ever come to seeing what the place looks like again. the dry bed of Groom Lake, corrugated metal buildings, a 3-mile-long runway, and some highly sophisticated radar and detection equipment. It's been known by many names over the years: Dreamland, the Ranch, the Skunk Works. If ever there was a place to test a secret new technology, this is it. And that's exactly what's been done here for decades. Area 51 is where Francis Gary Powers and the other U-2 pilots were trained in the 50s, and where the U-2 itself was developed. The SR-71 spy planes that spotted Soviet missiles in Cuba in the early 60s were also developed at 51. 51 is where stealth technology was nurtured, where Star Wars devices are still tested, and where all manner of CIA monkey business has been plotted and refined. It's the perfect place for secret things, but of course, that's no secret. 51 is ringed by the forbidden vastness of the Nevada test site, by the looming Groom Mountains, and by sparsely populated desert expanses. The few people who do live out here have no love lost for the military, but they're conservative, patriotic, and they mind their own business. You ever see stuff you can't explain?
Sure. Lots of stuff.
Care to elaborate?
No.
On any given night at the Rachel Bar and Grill, you might find 3 or 4 people who work at Area 51, there amid the flowing Budweisers and cowboy hats. You might find them, but they aren't going to talk to you, not about the things they've seen over the mountains. A steady trickle of curiosity seekers flows through here, strangers drawn by strange stories of lights in the night sky. Their questions also go unanswered. No one who's worked at Dreamland has ever publicly acknowledged what so many people have suspected for years, that alien technology is being tested in the Nevada desert. The speculation first surfaced in documents obtained by UFO researchers, documents about something called Project Aquarius. The documents, allegedly prepared for an organization called MJ-12, state that a program to fly recovered alien spacecraft was established in 1972 and is continuing in Nevada. The National Security Agency has confirmed it does have a Project Aquarius, but denies it has anything to do with flying saucers. NSA will not say what Project Aquarius is. Speculation was heightened in 1984 when the Air Force seized nearly 90,000 acres around Groom Lake. The action was, by most accounts, illegal. During congressional hearings about the land grab, Congressman John Seiberling grilled the military about the legal authority used in the action and was told the authority was at a much, much higher level than the Air Force. Seiberling asked what authority is higher than the laws of the United States. The Air Force official said he could respond, but only in a closed briefing. In 1987, when the Air Force sought to renew its stranglehold on the Groom Range, news articles once again mentioned the talk about alien spacecraft, and subsequent articles in national magazines quoted unnamed sources about things of alien origin flying in Nevada, things that would make filmmaker George Lucas drool. Despite the speculation, no one who knew Area 51 from the inside ever talked publicly about the saucer stories.
Well, there's several, actually 9 flying saucers, flying discs that are out there of extraterrestrial origin.
The live interview with the shadowy Dennis drew international attention. Portions were broadcast by radio in 6 European countries and in a nationally televised TV special in Japan.
Actually 9 flying saucers, flying discs.
Despite numerous inquiries and feelers, Dennis has remained anonymous until now. His real name is Robert Lazar, a young scientist with eclectic interests. The choice of Dennis was an inside joke. He says that's the name of his superior at Groom Lake. It wasn't a joke to Dennis.
He called right after and he said, "Do you have any idea what we're going to do to you now?" And I said, "Well, no." He hung up the phone.
Lazar's story is, by any standards, fantastic. He says he's telling it in order to protect himself. He says he was hired to work at an area called S4, which is a few miles south of Groom Lake. At S4, he says, are flying saucers, antimatter reactors, and other working examples of technology that is seemingly beyond human capabilities.
Right, this came from somewhere else. I mean, as bizarre as that is to believe, but I mean, it's there. I saw it. I know what the current state of the art is in physics, and it can't be done.
Checking out Lazar's credentials proved to be a difficult task. He says he earned degrees in physics and electronics, but the schools we contacted say they've never heard of him. He also said he worked as a physicist at Los Alamos National Lab, where he experimented with one of the world's largest particle beam accelerators, a half-mile-long behemoth capable of generating 700 million volts. Los Alamos officials told us they had no records of a Robert Lazar ever working there. They were either mistaken or were lying. A 1982 phone book from the lab lists Lazar right there among the other scientists and technicians. A 1982 clipping from the Los Alamos newspaper profiled Lazar and his interest in jet cars. It, too, mentioned his employment at the lab as a physicist. We called Los Alamos again. An exasperated official told us he still had no records on Lazar. EG&G, which is where Lazar says he was interviewed for the job at S4, also has no records. It's as if someone has made him disappear.
Well, they're trying to make me a non-person.
Explain. You called where?
Well, the schools that I went to, the hospital that I was born at, past job, and essentially nothing comes up with my name in it.
He smiles, but out of futility, knowing the whole thing must sound ridiculous. According to Lazar, his employer was the United States Navy. He says he and other government employees would gather near EG&G, fly to Groom Lake, and then a very few people would get into a bus with blacked out or no windows and drive to S4.
When you get off the bus, what do you see?
It's a very interesting building. It's got a slope of probably about 30 degrees, which are hangar doors. And it has textured paint on it, but it looks like sand. It's made to look like the side of the mountain that it's in, whether it's to disguise it from satellite photographs or what.
He says he was never told exactly what he'd be working on, but figured it had something to do with advanced propulsion. On his first day, he was told to read a series of briefings and immediately realized how advanced the propulsion was.
The power source is an antimatter reactor. They run gravity amplifiers. There's actually two parts to the drive mechanism. It's a bizarre technology. There's no physical hookup between any of the systems in there. They use gravity as a wave, using waveguides, almost like microwaves.
It took a while, Lazar says, before he actually saw one of the flying discs. However, there were hints everywhere.
Right, they had a poster, and it looked like a commercial poster almost, like it was lithographed and you could buy it at a Kmart or something. But they were all over the place, and it had the disc that I coined the term the sport model. Was lifted off the ground about 3 feet at area S4 on the dry lake there, and the caption on the bottom said "They're here," and those are just all over the place.
Later, he got to see the real thing.
When I was let in, it was the first time I saw the sport model in the hangar, sitting down, and I was told they could have walked me in the front door, but they purposely wanted to walk me by it. I was told not to say anything and just keep my eyes forward and walk past the disc into the office area. And I did, and as we went by it, I just kind of stuck my hands on it just to run it alongside the thing, and that was about the smallest time. After that, I got to see it actually lift off the ground and operate.
But you also, in between that, you saw more than one.
Yeah. The hangars are all connected together, and there are large bay doors between each one. And there were 9 total that I saw, each one being different. Like they had the assortment pack.
Security at S4 was oppressive, Lazar says, and his superiors used fear and intimidation almost as a brainwashing tool.
It did everything but physically hurt me.
Put a gun to your head?
Yeah.
And said what? Actually put a gun to your head?
Well, they did that even in the original security briefings. They had guards there with M16s, they had guys slamming their finger into my chest, screaming in my ear, some people pointing weapons at me. Like I said, it's not a good place to work.
That fear factor would surface later. Lazar agreed to undergo a polygraph exam as part of this report. Polygrapher Ron Slay asked about the technology Lazar had seen.
Did you knowingly lie when you said you had actually seen anti-gravity propulsion in operation?
No.
The results of this exam were inconclusive. Lazar appeared to be truthful on one test, deceitful on a second. Slay recommended that a second examiner be brought in. Polygrapher Terry Tavernetti runs a corporate security operation and is a former Los Angeles police officer. He put Lazar through 4 tests and concluded there was no attempt to deceive.
And I left there thinking that
I feel we do have some credibility to what the subject had to say. And that's when I went to some of my colleagues.
Tavernetti sent the test results to a third polygrapher who agreed the results appeared truthful. The charts were then sent to a fourth examiner who did not agree, suggesting Lazar might be relating information he'd learned from someone else. The polygraphers conferred and decided they would not issue a final statement on truthfulness until more specific testing can be conducted, and that's where it stands. Tavernetti believes that difficulty in determining Lazar's truthfulness stems from the fear that was drilled into him.
I think we're talking about a subject here that is so far-reaching, and it is so emotional. And when you're dealing with emotions, this is polygraph, because we're dealing, in polygraph, you're looking at fear. The fear of getting caught telling a lie because something bad will happen to you if you do.
Well, I am telling the truth. I've tried to prove that. What's going on up there could be the most important event in history. You're talking about contact, physical contact and proof from another system, another planet, another intelligence. That's got to be the biggest event in history, period.
And it's real.
And it's real and it's there. And I had an extremely small part in it, but I'm convinced that what I saw is absolute proof of that. There is no way we could have created those systems. There's no way we could have made the disks, the power supplies, anything to go with them.
Lazar says he has no intention of going on any UFO lecture circuit. He's not looking to do any additional interviews. In fact, he wasn't too crazy about doing this one. He did it after certain unfavorable things started happening in his life, and he did it because he feels that whoever is running the show up at S4 is perpetrating a fraud on the American people and on the scientific community. We intend to have much more about this story, about the operation up there, on Monday and beyond. This is by no means the end of this series of reports. In fact, on Monday, including in our story there, support testimony from other people who say they have knowledge of the flying discs at the test site, and information from people who know Lazar very well and insist his story is true.
That was pretty much it. They started talking about what was going to be on next on the news channel and stuff. So.
You notice how they tried to spin that? You know, this is something that happens a lot in the media. They'll have somebody come out after something is there that clearly establishes X, Y, Z, and then they'll bring somebody in to go, hey, this X is over here and Z is over here.
They're always doing that. They're always doing that to Knapp.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, the only reason he has stayed on the air all these years is because the person that owns the station is, I've got a sneaking suspicion that Bob Bigelow's got something to do with that television station. It's somebody who believes in UFOs, because otherwise Knapp would have been shut down, and you know, he wouldn't be out there. And he's been on the air doing this for years.
Oh, yeah.
The next video, you want me to go ahead and play that?
Yeah, go right ahead.
The next video, it was done many years later. You'll see when you see Knapp and the guy that gave the lie detector test that they just showed, they look a whole bunch different now. So I'm going to go ahead and play that. So, and this is about the lie detector test that they mentioned in the last clip that they gave Bob Lazar. So let me find it. Okay, here we go.
30 years ago tonight, KLAS began an 8-part news series about the weird world of UFO conspiracies. One of the featured interviews was with a respected polygraph examiner who became entangled with UFO lore when he agreed to conduct a lie detector test on a controversial whistleblower named Bob Lazar. George Knapp and the I-Team caught up with the polygraph expert 3 decades later.
So this is the same machine you used on Lazar?
That's it.
How many polygraphs do you think you've done on this machine?
Thousands.
Terry Tavernetti doesn't use his gleaming polygraph machine anymore, During his many years working in corporate security at major casino properties on the Las Vegas Strip, he tested thousands of employees. Before that, he worked as a police officer in Southern California. He had no idea he and his lie detector might be drawn into one of the most controversial UFO cases of all time, the claims made by former government scientist Bob Lazar.
Yeah, I think so.
In November 1989, Lazar's name and face were revealed to the public for the first time in a KLAS TV news series. Lazar's claims about working on flying saucers at a hidden facility near Area 51 set off a UFO stampede that continues to this day.
The job I had, the involvement with the government cover-up, that sort of thing, the story isn't altered in any way.
Lazar agreed to a polygraph test. The first one he did was inconclusive. The examiner thought Lazar was so nervous that it was difficult to get an accurate read on him. Tavernetti was recommended. He questioned Lazar about the central allegations that he had seen a flying disc at a base called S4, that the craft was powered by an antimatter reactor and generated its own gravity. To Tavernetti's surprise, Lazar passed.
My personal thoughts, the pre-test interview of 3.5 hours, the test itself, the post-test interview showed absolutely nothing to detour my thought that Bob Lazar was truthful.
Tavernetti wasn't a UFO guy, had never polygraphed anyone about that issue, had no core beliefs either way. But 30 years later, he recalls what was going through his mind during the test. As it appeared, Lazar was being truthful.
Is it occurring to you, holy crap, this guy could be telling the truth, this all could be real?
Oh, yeah, when that time comes, that is unbelievable.
After the first news story aired about Tavernetti's test, two strange things happened. The first is he was called on the carpet by his employer because of a phone call from an unnamed federal agency.
The corporate offices where I'm employed received a telephone call from a government agency wanting to know why I was getting involved in something that I shouldn't be. And I asked, well, what agency? What was said? Did they identify themselves?
He never learned which agency had called. There was an internal investigation by his employer, but Tavernetti was not disciplined. The second thing to happen 2 months after the story aired is there was a break-in at his home.
And these are the charts.
Huh?
These are the charts.
Those are the actual charts, yeah.
Did somebody try to steal these from you? Was there a break-in? Somebody tried to come and get them from you?
You know, right off the bat, I want to say yes.
But Tavernetti had made copies of the Lazar charts. He shared them with colleagues to see if they agreed with his opinion. 2 of them did. One suggested there should be more testing. Tavernetti admits polygraphs are not foolproof, but they are widely used by police and employers as useful tools. He doesn't regret getting drawn into the Bob Lazar saga and says the experience caused a permanent change in how he views the UFO question.
Over the years, my belief has swayed that way. And it gets to the point now where I go, well, why not?
Is it because of that?
Oh, yeah.
George Knapp, 8 News Now.
Tavernetti retired a few years ago, but still lives here in Las Vegas. The original story about his polygraph test was part of an investigative series that aired only once, starting on this date back in 1990. But we have resurrected the stories from our archives, and you can watch them on MysteryWire.com.
Fascinating. Mark, we can't hear you.
Now you can.
Yes.
I was clearing my throat during the video, so I shut the microphone down.
I hear
But
you.
anyway, it's interesting how much those people have changed.
Yes. It's almost like a president. You know how presidents are looking like 80 years older? But yeah, this is clearly, these are people who've had high stress situations.
But
And
they have had 30 years to get rid of Bob Lazar.
yeah,
And have been, thanks to George Knapp and some of those people, they have been unable to do that.
exactly.
It is still pretty clear that, Lazar is a legitimate person to listen to. Now, have you ever seen Bob Lazar's documentary that he made?
Yes. yes.
Where he pulls up in the Corvette.
Yep.
And then he tells about how the propulsion system probably works, and he talks about element what was it, 115?
115, yeah.
Yeah, and how it functions. And the funny thing is that the Russians discovered element 115 after they said that Bob Lazar was crazy, that there was no element 115.
Yep.
And then the Russians discovered the same element that he was talking about. So,
but there is a rumor, and again, this is just scuttlebutt at this point, that 115 was found on Skinwalker Ranch by Bob Bigelow. So,
yeah, it's funny that all the stuff that Bigelow did is being withheld from the people that currently own Skinwalker Ranch.
yes, I find that not only frustrating, and I know Eric Bard, Travis Taylor is a great guy, and he's an expert in several fields, but Eric Bard is the head scientist. And he's the one that is most irritated at the fact that they've been totally kept away from all of the data that was collected.
Now, I was listening to Ryan Skinner's book.
Yes.
Well, he's got several of them out there. One of them about being chased around by a skinwalker, which I think is kind of science fiction.
Yeah, but, either that or really good weed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not real comfortable with him as a source, but one thing he does mention, though, is that he believes that the ranch got much less active when the big research companies came in.
Yep.
That, they deliberately weren't doing as much when those people were there to record it as they were when Tom Gorman was running. Gorman's the one that had 3 of his dogs killed by one of the blue orbs.
Yep.
Now, those orbs all seem to have different functions.
Yep.
There's the blue ones, the yellow ones, and the red ones that they talk about.
Red, orange.
And the red orbs seem to be the smallest, and they seem to be directed by like the blue orb.
Yep.
Like they're little job doers, go do that.
They're the minion.
Yeah. And the blue one seems to be the most intelligent, but that's the one that killed the dogs, was a blue one. So now it killed the dogs after being repeatedly attacked by the dogs.
Yeah.
So, I think maybe if the dogs hadn't done that, it probably wouldn't have hurt the dogs. So I don't know.
It certainly doesn't seem to be. And I have to say, Jacques Vallée, the scientist and writer, made a rather fascinating remark, and I think it goes along with all of the information we've been given, that the UAPs represent a combination of technology with consciousness controlling the apparatus directly, not like we do. And to me, that sounds exactly like what we're seeing on Skinwalker Ranch, what we see in anything where there's something paranormal going on. So it's, I think that's the orbs, especially the one that was caught on camera on Skinwalker Ranch, Secret Skinwalker Ranch, the series. The orb that's a white colored orb, which is one of the they see those quite frequently, and they regard.
Did they establish it was white? Because the video they showed was black and white.
Yes, no, it was white.
It was? Okay.
Yeah. And they've also taken photos of a similar orb interacting with birds on the property. And Eric was so positive it had to have been a bug that he actually, sent it in to people who do that kind of identification. And they said, no, it's some kind of plasmic, self-illuminated object. And so that's an orb.
Well, the orbs have been around for, 50, 60 years, since World War II. The Foo Fighters were orbs.
Yep. UAPs. Hello. That's my grandniece, Georgia.
Hello, Georgia.
Hi.
How you doing, sweetie?
Yes, Georgia. I'm on the podcast.
I want to be in the podcast.
Well, you can't do it, but here, say hi to everybody. People are watching, so say hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Tell them who you are. Don't tell them your last name, but just tell them who you are. Just say, I'm Georgia.
I'm Georgia.
Georgia's going to be a mathematician one day. Aren't you, sweetie?
Yeah.
Well, you're going to be whatever you want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's also one of Barbie's biggest fans. So, what we should do on Halloween is talk to Georgia and see if she has any ghost stories.
Already talking?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
I want to be a princess cat for Halloween.
Oh, good. Okay. I think maybe we'll tell ghost stories.
Georgia,
That'll
you
be
are on TV. You don't want to show your underwear, so keep your legs down.
Yeah, that shows up anywhere, and I'm going to kill somebody. So.
Okay.
Not literally, but.
Bye, sweetie.
We love you.
Okay, I'm back.
And Georgia actually has a very interesting story about kind of some wild stuff that happened in their house. Anyway, and the thing of it is, if you listen to Bob Lazar for 10 minutes, it becomes so obvious this man. They're coming to take you away, haha.
Well, we have a street right outside my window that's not very far away. So
yeah, Mark is just right off a main drag.
Yeah, whenever emergency vehicles go down there, it becomes loud.
Well, that's kind of the way it's supposed to be. And by the way, we got an ancestry update. We are officially 52% Scots-Irish and 38% English. So we can follow up on that on Halloween, which is of course a Celtic holiday.
Now, I am working on getting one of our past guests, Steve Ross, to come on for our Halloween show.
Oh, very good.
Which I thought would be good, because if you don't remember or if you didn't see that show, Steve Ross is making a movie called Carnival, as in carnival, but evil. And he's in the process right now. He's doing the casting of the movie. So I guess he's gotten funding someplace for the movie.
If he's doing casting, he is.
Well, he has a lot of actors who are friends. that that karate guy he did a bunch of movies. He's called The Dragon.
Yeah.
I forget his name. I always thought he looked like the guy in La Bamba.
Oh, Lou Diamond?
The one that played
the brother?
Yeah, no, the one that played the singer.
Oh, Lou Diamond Phillips.
Yeah. I always thought this guy kind of looked like a young Lou Diamond Phillips. So, but he's been in Steve knows a bunch of those people. So he's got connections in the entertainment industry.
That's what you need when you're making movies.
Yeah, so it's not like just you or me doing it. So I've been trying to get a hold of him. I'm going to try to get him to come on to the podcast as a guest for our Halloween show. I don't know what date that'll be. However close a Sunday we have to Halloween.
Yeah, I have a couple of guests I'm developing right now. So,
well, if you would, yeah, I mean, we can put Steve on a different time.
No, Steve
work
goes
out.
first. Steve is a longtime friend, so he goes.
Yeah, Steve and I worked together for 17 years at a company out in Los Alamitos.
Yep.
So, and I don't believe India. Well, I'm not there anymore, and I don't think Steve is. I don't think he works there anymore.
It didn't seem that he did.
Yeah,
I must say,
left. I'm sorry.
Regarding the video we saw, George Knapp referred to Area 51 as another name for it being Skunk Works. That is not the case. Skunk Works
is Lockheed.
Yes. It's a facility here in the Antelope Valley.
But the Skunk Works did a lot of their testing in Area 51.
Yes.
So that's probably what he meant. The area is that's not Skunk Works. But the Skunk Works, they develop airplanes and they test them at Area 51. So I think that's what he was referring to. You know, you get a lot of these media, like, I don't know if you ever saw it, but one of those tabloids, Midnight Sun. That was
yes.
Midnight Sun put out an article that said that the Pico Rivera facility of Northrop, that walking the aisles of that place were gray-skinned aliens. Well, I worked there, and I never saw a gray-skinned alien. I'm sorry. I saw a lot of ugly-looking people, but none of them that I think are aliens. So you hear these things, and if you have no way of knowing that it's not true,
I think most people would, take that with a boulder of salt.
You know, it's funny how when you see it, for instance, Men in Black.
Yeah.
The original one, the first one.
The good one.
Right. Well, Tommy Lee Jones makes a mention of the fact that everything you read in the National Enquirer is true.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you've heard this, but they actually say, the government says that a lot of what you read in the National Enquirer is really true.
Yeah.
The UFO things and alien abductions and that those are things that they let them play it there and don't restrict it because they know nobody's going to believe it.
Yeah, exactly. And
so that's a lot of what you read there is real.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure, the one about the bat baby and crazy, they got stuff that's,
that wasn't that wasn't the National Enquirer.
Oh, okay.
That was the World Weekly News. That the Bat Boy. But I have to say that following Dr. John Schindler, you find out the most interesting things. I mean, he came out and told us that Bigfoot's real. It exists in some form, and it's not a complete hoax or dramatized idea. And he says he thinks there's a good case for the afterlife. So these are things that when you hear it coming from somebody highly educated with, you know, a background of that kind, it's something to make you think. Not that highly educated people are always right; they are quite often wrong. But
I'll tell you, when we first, well, before we started looking into these things,
yes.
I thought the Bigfoot stories were laughable.
Yeah, me too.
You know, I'd look at those things and say, oh, come on. You know, but the more I've read up on this and listened to these people, there's got to be a little something to this. I don't know what it is. You know, there's people saying it's a ghostly thing, and that's why you can't find them. And you know, and the main thing is they say, why have we not found any skeletons, artifacts, you know, camps or anything from Bigfoot? Why
Well,
have we never found? But an expert came in and said that before we discovered the mountain gorillas, that they had never found any evidence of one.
yep.
So, you know, there's something there. I don't know.
And
But
also, you know, we live in an area that's rife with coyotes. I
yeah,
never see a dead coyote. I mean, I think I've seen one in my life that had been hit by the side of the road, but it's not something you see. So, you know, there has to be a larger question here, and I think that's what we're going to have to satisfy before we'll get down to all of these cryptids. The From what I read in Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, it is very clear that there is something to the cryptids because of the appearance before those people with intelligence backgrounds and connections within their family, of a wolf that was built like a human being. And when you see something like that in a book that's co-written by a physicist, you have to start questioning whether the Planet of the Apes is really a paradigm we can go with anymore. And clearly it's not. There's something more going on. And my experiences with hearing from my sisters and my brother's experiences, all these things. There's something else going on, and if Skinwalker Ranch didn't assure you of that, nothing will. That shouldn't be going on in the Clockwork universe. Wouldn't you agree, Mark?
well, you know, it's so hard. That's why I haven't done a segment on Bigfoot, because the stuff out there is so hit and miss that it's difficult for me to find 2 or 3 clips that I can hang my hat on. Because you get a lot of them where it's obvious somebody is trying to push this forward as a meme. You
Yeah.
know, that's not what I want to see. I want to see one where somebody just happened to be out on a picnic and walking across the field was a Bigfoot. And you don't want the ones where people went out hunting the Bigfoot.
Yeah. I
Because
definitely see your point.
because the ones that are hunting the Bigfoot, any noise they hear is a Bigfoot. You know what I mean? They just automatically think it's a Bigfoot. when it could be a bear, it could be somebody else out in the forest that happens to walk through there, or
Well, there are serious scientists though that are out in the field. I mean, God, I'll mispronounce her name. I know I will. Dr. Maria Maher, who was on the Expedition Bigfoot series. She's a primatologist, and she has done some really remarkable work in that field. She's the only reason I take it seriously now.
Well, I saw the one that they did on Expedition X.
No, that's not.
Where they were looking for Bigfoot. And that show, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that show. Sometimes I looked at it and said, this looks legitimate. And sometimes, or you'll see something and then later on you'll see enough other things that you say, okay, then that first one was crap. You know, like one of the worst UFO shows out there, in my opinion, is UFO Hunters.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
That thing is tripe.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. But now I know the guy that runs it is the one that started UFO Magazine. And,
yeah. Don Ecker.
I don't know if he still publishes that or not. But a lot of the stuff you see on there is like, huh? Yeah.
Well, Don Ecker is the kind of, he was the science editor of UFO Magazine along with being the publisher.
Mm.
And I once heard him say nuclear.
Well, our president said that.
I know, but, you know, it's when you're somebody who's supposed to be the science editor of the magazine and you're saying nuclear.
You know, in all these years, people made fun of him, and then you see the stuff that our current president says and does, and it's like, oh God, George Bush was a genius.
Yes. George, but I mean, you really can't go by presidents because they aren't the smartest fish in the sea.
Not always, no.
And so, you know, thankfully we have a structure beyond them that keeps them from doing too much damage in the meantime.
Yeah, let's hope.
Well, no, I read all of these intelligence agents now, or ex-intelligence agents, and they all say that there's nothing any president can do to hurt the system. They can make noise and, you know, run flashlights around, but they can't do anything structurally.
87,000 armed IRS agents? That sounds pretty dangerous to me.
They have 120 now. So that's kind of a mild hiring.
Yes, but they're all going to be armed, which they weren't before. No. Nope. This is a new thing.
Really?
Yep.
That's amazing.
They have never been armed before. They're going to be now.
Yeah. Well, good.
All of the existing, and you know what? They don't do any kind of background checks of these people in terms of firearms. And that's what I was reading about, that they're not going to do a background check on the people they hire.
I was talking to our accountant about all of that, and he basically said, "Well, it's just the usual stuff they do." And
well, they're going to audit you. That's coming. There's going to be, they said 30% of the people that do their taxes this year are going to be audited.
Yeah. Well, they're not going to come after people like me because I think out of 3 years, I'm getting about $1,500 back each year. It's going to cost them more to audit than it is to, they're not going to get anything out of my hide. So
let's people that are watching this don't want to hear about that. So.
That's true. Well, they're all worried about that too. But anyway.
Hey, we have 3 people.
I know. Oh, hi
Never
guys.
had 3 people. Whoever it is, hello.
We had 4 earlier.
Oh, I didn't see that. Oh, now we're back to 2. Whoever it was left.
Man.
Oh, this isn't Mindy and Joe. Oh,
Oh yeah. Oh,
who the heck are
probably
these people?
around here somewhere.
So,
Yeah.
all right, just to tell the viewers,
Yes.
Melody came up with a bunch of interesting ghost photos.
Yes. Very well known ghost photos.
But they came out right before we came on, and I thought it would be better for us to discuss them if I could have a little time to look into them, check on where they came from, who took the picture. I don't want to say I'm a Photoshop expert, but I am well versed in Photoshop. I've used it for years and years and years.
He has.
And still use it. And I produced a ghost photo that I put on Facebook. I explained at the beginning of the photo, right when I posted it, that I had created it. It wasn't a real ghost. And, I even showed how I created it because I was trying to explain, because you get all these people on there posting things that just are silly. And I was trying to explain to give them a better, what's the word I'm looking for?
A better idea.
Better knowledge of what it was they were looking at, so they could throw out the stupid stuff. And there was probably 100 people on there talking about how this was a real ghost and that I was wrong. And I created it. I went and got a picture off a website of some girl standing there wearing period costume, and then I used the opacity filter. I don't know if you're familiar with what that is, on Facebook to fade her out to where you can barely see her. Then I just found a picture of a drawing room in some house and just stuck her in there. And oh God, that's a real ghost. And just realize that you can do anything with Photoshop.
Well, that's why, one of the reasons why photographic evidence of paranormal is really weak. And 90% of it is mistaken information in the photo. It's pareidolia. It's all of these things. However, there is such a thing as counterpareidolia, which is inability to see images and patterns.
Well,
let me.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I want to say that the only, and yes, most photos posted to these groups are not fake, but are not real evidence of the paranormal. And the only reason I don't address them on some of the groups is because the people who are posting them are in mourning. And if they need to believe that that's a picture of their little 9-year-old, then by God, I'm going to.
That's what it is.
That's what it is. If that's what it is to you, that's what it is. And
well, when I realized that on Facebook, that I would say, "Oh, that can't be." And they say, "Oh, my little girl died, and I took that picture." It's, oh, then that must be what it is. And I learned to ask questions before I made a comment.
I know you did. And there is one photo I would like to show, which Ben took, so I know it's real. And it it's will be a matter of pattern perception if you have an inability to see patterns. I know you do have the ability.
I can't see, you know how those books with the 3D image?
I can never see those.
I can't see them.
Yeah.
I've tried, I cannot see them.
Some people can, some people can't. And that's just the way it is. Let's see if I can find this quickly, because we only have 5 minutes. And
hey, you must have a timer. You used to, you didn't know how much time you had left.
I have one now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so funny. We went in, Larry was saying to me, I really need to get an hourglass. And just here's an example of synchronicity. And I said, okay, I don't know where I'd get one. I'll have to keep a lookout. So I went over to a thrift store, which I like to do just to look for stuff to sell. And what do I find sitting there on the shelf?
An hourglass.
An hourglass.
You know what I used to use when I did my podcast was a kitchen timer.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, I have a little timer ticking away over here, which is silent. So
well, while you're looking for the photo, I want to make a real quick comment.
Go for it.
I've got a green screen. What I'm thinking of doing is taking a photograph of this background image and using Photoshop, edit in a walking zombie walking behind the headstones, and then do it on green screen and have that video image behind me. So when people are watching me, they'll see the same image, but they'll see a zombie walking behind the headstones.
It's a very good idea. Okay.
Freak people out.
This photo will have to be studied for a bit, but
can you scan that and send it to me for next week's show?
Yes, I will. This is a photo my son took. And in it, if you look closely enough, and if you have a pattern-seeking mind, you will see an image of a German Shepherd and another of a Chow dog.
I see two people's faces on the left and right. Are those supposed to be there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm talking about. Okay. Those are the faces. And I'll send them over. I thought they were people at the beginning too, but then the more you look at it, it's like, oh my God,
let me scan it and then, or scan it in the most high resolution picture you can get.
Yeah, unfortunately, all we have is this crappy resolution, but it's an old ghost hunting photo but I was the one who downloaded it from the camera as soon as they walked in from the cinema.
Oh, well, do you still have that file?
No.
Darn it.
I know. Oh, trust me, this is so frustrating.
Well, ask Ben, maybe he's got it on his camera still.
I asked him. He doesn't even know where the camera is.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll do what we can.
You know your nephew.
All right, we got 2 minutes.
Okay, I am sending you the photo so you can look at it later.
So I'm going to take Melody's ghost pictures. I'm going to look and try to find some of my own. I'm going to go online and see what experts have said about Melody's photos. And what I think, one of Melody's photos, to me, looks like a classic double exposure. But she says it was shot with a Polaroid. Now, I don't know if you could do a double exposure with the Polaroid. I think you could. If you didn't take and it depends on what kind of Polaroid camera they used.
Well, according to the
I'm sorry, go ahead.
According to the photographers who examined the photos, it's a series of photos from 1968.
Okay, that would be the old Polaroid land camera then, the one that folds out like an accordion.
Yeah, probably. But they have, according to them, and again, there is no
Nobody
exact science.
knows. That's the one thing about photographs. You can say what you want, get experts to say what they want, but you can't tell.
Yeah, no.
Whether somebody has edited it. You know, they will display the classic symptoms of something that's been edited, but that's all you can really say.
Exactly.
All right, well,
guys.
it's time to go.
It is time to go. You guys have a great week. We'll be back with a further exploration into the field of ghost photos, whatever that means. And we hope you have a great week.
All right, let me play the theme song going out.
Play us out, brother.
Okay, we're going. See you next week.